Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to create revenue movement reporting within Salesforce based on opportunities. Now, the way this works is you basically take each renewal opportunity and compare it with the previous opportunity that it is renewing for. And with that, you can generate the difference between the two amounts of those contracts and determine whether it's an upsell, a downsell, a churn, or if it's a net new booking. The variables that you need to consider when you're creating this data is the record type of the opportunity, whether it's a new booking or a renewal. You have to consider whether it's closed won or closed lost, or if it's open pipeline. And you also just have to check whether or not the amount is greater than or less than the previous amount. So looking at this example here on the right, let's start with this. So you can see we have a whole bunch of new bookings which are showing up in red. These are net new bookings closed won by sales. We're not showing any closed lost deals by sales because that was never any revenue movement. We don't care about that in this report. We're also showing upsells. Upsells are when it's a closed won renewal and the amount of the contract is greater than the previous. So that's what that is showing. And then we also have here downsells, which is when the amount of the renewal is less than the previous. And then we also have churn, which is when the renewal is just closed lost. There's also going to be flat renewals where the amount is unchanged, and you probably would want to have reporting on that as well so you can understand which contracts are not getting increased on renewal. And then I've also created a separate report here on the right, which is just showing how much is up for renewal in each month and showing the revenue movement associated with that, which is then used to calculate the NRR. So NRR is just the revenue movement difference between the current contracts that got renewed and the amount in the previous. So in this case, there was $6,000 up for renewal. They added $4,000, so the revenue retention is 166%. If we look at December, there's $5,000 up for renewal. The revenue movement was flat, so the net retention is 100% because they retained all the revenue, so they didn't lose or downsell anyone. Let's skip ahead to this month here, May, where there was $20,000 up for renewal, but $15,000 was lost, so only 25% of what was up for renewal got renewed. So that's what this is showing. And then we have a churn here, which is showing there was $3,000 up for renewal, and the revenue movement is negative $3,000, which means they lost all the revenue. So the revenue retention here is 0%. I'm going to show you how to make this with a formula field that just looks at the stages and compares the amounts together. So let's get into the actual formula and then I'll get into the report. So the first field I want to show you is revenue movement type. And this is going to look a little complicated because it is, but we're just looking at a few variables here. So the record type, so if it's a sales record type and it's closed won, that's going to be a new booking. So you're going to classify that revenue movement as new. If the record type is a renewal and it's closed lost, then the type is going to be churn. If the record type is renewal and it's closed won and the amount is greater than 0, that's an upsell. If the record type is renewal and it's closed won and it's less than 0, that's a downsell. If there's no change in the revenue movement, then it's flat. And if it doesn't meet any of these conditions, then just leave it as blank. So that's the syntax for this formula. I'll just maybe put a link to this somewhere so you can just copy paste it. You can also just edit it to customize to your needs. Now let's look at the revenue movement amount. So this formula looks almost the same. It's looking, if it's a sales new booking and it's closed won, then just use the amount. If it's a renewal and it's closed lost, use the lost revenue amount, but the negative value of it. So whatever the previous contract was worth, you just lost all that revenue. So that's what this formula is. It's referencing the previous opportunity and giving it a negative value. If it's closed won renewal and it's greater than 0, then you're going to use amount minus renewal amount, which is just the difference. The same thing goes for downsells. It's the same formula. And then if it's flat, it's just going to be 0, and then of type null if everything else is not meeting those conditions. And then the last formula we're going to need is renewal amount, which is just showing us how much is up for renewal. So this is just looking for where record type is renewal and it's a closed opportunity. You're just going to take the renewal amount. So that's just referencing how much revenue was up for renewal. And now that we have these formula fields, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So this is looking at all closed opportunities here. As you can see, the sales opportunity. So this is a sales opportunity here because you can see it's a new booking. The renewal amount is 0 because there's no revenue to protect. It's the first iteration of this contract, so it's blank. The revenue movement is 3,000 added of type new. Now let's look at this renewal here. So this was one that was a renewal. The amount to protect was 3,000. There was no revenue movement, so we call it flat. Then let's look at this upsell. So in this case, it's a renewal for $5,000. It's protecting 3,000, which was the previous contract amount, and it's increasing the current contract by $2,000, which is why it's showing up as an upsell. Now, if we go down, let's look at this downsell here. So there's 20,000 up for renewal, which is referencing this previous opportunity. The difference is it's going down to 4,999, which is a $15,000 downsell, and it's showing up here as the negative amount, and there is a revenue movement type of downsell. And the last one here is churn. So there was 3,000 up for renewal. The opportunity is closed lost, and as you can see, there is $3,000 of lost revenue of type churn. Now when you take all this and put it in a dashboard, you get a view of revenue movement over time broken down into new revenue, upsold revenue, downsold revenue, and churn. So this is how you get revenue movement. There's more complex ways you can do it. You can get into much more sophisticated edge cases, which I'll talk about briefly. But I want to talk about this report here, which is just looking at the amount that is up for renewal and revenue movement side by side. So the way you would get this is you just sum the revenue amount for your closed won opportunities. You have side by side the revenue movement, and this is just showing you how much revenue is getting protected. So in this case, this team's doing very well because it looks like they're adding revenue in almost every month, except for this month here with that massive downsell. And then this month here with that churn. So basically what you want to see if you're successful at renewing contracts is you want this light blue to be positive or 0. You don't want it to be negative because then your revenue is contracting. And then we have here another report which is just showing the calculation of NRR, which is just showing how much revenue movement is happening in each month. And are we retaining revenue? If it's positive, it means your revenue retention is, you're actually retaining more revenue than you have assigned to protect. If it's 100%, that means you've renewed at the exact amount. If it's negative, it means less than 100, it means that you've lost revenue. And if it's 0, it means that you lost all revenue for that period. These reports you can click into so you can actually see what opportunity caused it. So this opportunity lost $15,000 off the renewal. And yeah, I can click into these briefly if you want to see what they look like, but basically just grouping close month, revenue type, and summing up revenue movement for these reports. But yeah, all of this can be done. All of this complex revenue management stuff can be built in-house if you just know how to relate the objects to each other and compare their amounts. The few things I didn't cover would be things like, what do you do with open pipelines, so things that haven't closed yet? That's basically just future revenue where you can project whether or not you're going to have upsells or you're going to protect revenue or whether or not they're going to churn. You can do that if you set this up correctly. You might modify the formula a bit so you can see what's future revenue and what isn't. I didn't cover things like what happens if there's things like contract extensions, or if someone churns mid-contract, or if there's an upsell mid-contract. And I didn't actually cover the contract generation theme as well. That is a whole nother topic. But for now, I just wanted to show you how you can use the opportunity object to generate renewals automatically and create reports like this where you're seeing revenue movement by comparing the renewal opportunity with its predecessor, whatever came before it. And this is how you're going to see revenue movement on your contracts and opportunities. So I hope this gave you some ideas as far as how you can build stuff like this. And I will leave this video at that. If you want me to continue this series, please leave a comment. I'm going to pause this series for now. But if there is more interest in me going into more details here, I'm happy to do that. But I do have to move on to some other work, and I am going to cover a different topic, which is going to be either support or something else. But yeah, I'll leave this at that. So thank you for your time, and hopefully you learned something out of this. Bye.